6 o'clock, so let's get with it and call this meeting of the Brainerd School District School Board to order. We will begin with roll call, please, Kelly.
Kevin Boyle,
Here.
Michelle Brecken,
Here.
DJ Donnelly, Randy Heidman,
Here.
Sarah Spear,
Here.
John Ward. 2 absent.
4 of 6, we have a quorum, we can continue.
Right.
All right, let's move on and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the approval of the amended agenda as presented. The amendment is to remove the action item for tonight where we were going to vote to potentially put the 7th board member question as a ballot question in November. And since we have 2 board members absent, and there was probably some dialogue that needed to occur around that, because although I think all the board members were in favor of exploring the 7th board member, there were pieces we still wanted to talk about. The only thing that happens as a result of us doing this, it can still go to the voters for approval next year in 2025 on the November ballot. And it doesn't change the outcome, was if the voters were to approve it, it would have still be a seat that's added to the general election in 2026. So it doesn't change that timetable at all. It just changes when the voters would have a chance to say yes or no on it. Fair enough? Okay, so that's the only amendment to the agenda. There's only 3, so I need lots of motions.
Didn't know you needed a motion.
I'll make a motion to.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Heidman to approve the amended agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to public input. At this time, a member of the public can address the board, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Grant. Board of Education and Superintendent will not converse with the guests to address the topics covered at this time. So first up, we have Mr. Wade Hopajoki. Come on down.
I'll go quick, since there's only 4 of you and 1. First of all, we hosted our 2nd annual 14U AAA baseball tournament in Brainerd, July 19th, 20th, and 21st. We had 32 teams come from all over the state of Minnesota. We used 3 fields in the district, and then we used 4 fields out district, the city of Nisswa, the college, and then St. Matthias. My comment on there was policy 902, the tier system. And I'm wondering if there's a way, because this is the 2nd year we've done this, and not that we actually lose money doing this, but if there was a way that the system could be negotiated with the fee, there is that custodial fee of $50 an hour that is on there, and that's just policy. It's not, that's just what the policy is. And the grounds crew was phenomenal. Dave Borish is in the back, Grace Earthholtz. That was the transition of Jeff Flayton. Jeff was awesome, Brandon Beach. Everybody rocked it. Our only concern as an association and as a parent, and the only reason this comes up because last school board meeting, Director Donnelly's not here, talked about fundraising. We have to raise funds to host this tournament, so I don't know if there was a way with that custodial fee because we end up paying for our 3 fields almost 3 times as much as we do for the other 4. And that being, and it's not anybody's fault, that's just the policy, and if you go by that, I don't know, how do you go around it? I don't know what the answer is, but I think common sense has to go, okay, we're paying custodial fees, but we're really not using custodians to manage the field. It's grounds crew, it's stuff like that. So it's not anybody's fault, it's just the way it's set up. And this is the 2nd year hosting it, and we're hoping that we can host it as people love to come to our area. They love our field down at Don Adamson. Forest View Fields, we brought in a portable fence, and it was awesome. They love it, but I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it feasible, and if there's add another tier where you can negotiate support from the community to help offset those fees. That's it. All right.
Great, thanks, Wade.
Yep.
Appreciate the heads up on that. And next up, we have Doug Kern.
Thank you. Well, it's just more of a comment. Over the last couple of years,
I've wondered with the book challenges, what books would not be acceptable in the library? And at this point, I still wonder, with the pornographic material that we have there, what books wouldn't be acceptable, to the school system? I still wonder after seeing all the challenges. So, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. All right, that concludes public input. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from our last regular school board meeting on July 8th.
I'll make a motion, we approve the meeting minutes from July 8th.
I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Spear to approve the board meeting minutes from July 8th as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is the consent calendar.
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion from Director Spear and a second from Director Heidman to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, on to new business. First up would be the presentations. Maybe, Peter, do you want to do any kind of lead in for this?
So we had talked back in July about if the board was going to be interested in pursuing a levy referendum in November 2026. You've asked Marcy and I if we would consider finding a vendor or whatever to make a proposal on how they would conduct the type of a survey to find out, is the public interested in that? Do we have knowledge of what the level of taxation they would accept? Is there a plateau, so to speak? Plus, we could find out other things about the district. What do the community members think of it? Are we doing our job? Are we delivering the education of our students in an appropriate manner? Is the board operating solvently with these school finances and so forth? There's a variety of questions you can ask. So Marcy and I got together and we invited two presenters. First one is Darren Sievers. He represents School Perceptions. Darren is the Minnesota rep, I believe, correct, Darren?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Darren Sievers of School Perceptions.
Welcome, Darren. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I've got a PowerPoint for you. I'm going to start by introducing myself a little bit, though. So I'm a project manager of School Perceptions, but I've only been doing this job for 2 years.
Oh, your time's up, Doug.
Okay, thanks. All right. Nice to meet you.
That was good.
Beautiful drive
How
from Lake
far did
City.
you-
Yeah,
From the cities you had to come from?
Lake City. Lake City.
Oh, boy, that's a long
So a
drive.
little background, I was born and raised in Lake City, Minnesota, and then I took a job as a guidance counselor in suburban Milwaukee back in 1995, and I stayed with the same school district for 27 years. High school counselor, elementary principal, high school principal, and then the last 9 years as superintendent. How I came into the position working for School Perceptions is we were a regular customer of theirs when I was superintendent. We passed a $43 million referendum with their support. We use their staff and parent satisfaction surveys to gauge satisfaction and metrics and understand where we could do better on behalf of the kids in the community. And in the Milwaukee area, we had something called COVID back in 2020. I don't know if it made its way to Minnesota, but we even did a COVID survey about reopening school and what it would look like post-pandemic to open up and meet the needs of all of the different opinions that were coming my way as superintendent via email and phone. So we got a 90% response rate for the community on what it would look like to open up that fall after the nationwide shutdown. So through that process, I got to know the owner of the company, and he said, I would really like to have a superintendent on my team because you understand what it's like to be in Marcy and Peter's positions day to day. And I accepted because I was looking for a way to get home to Lake City because my mom is aging and needs more support. So I was either going to look for a superintendency or take a position like this. And it was a great fit for both of us because I believe in the product, I've used the product, and now I'm on the other side of the table partnering with school boards and helping them make big multi-million-dollar decisions that our survey tools are designed to guide. So I have a brief PowerPoint to give you some visual of what our process looks like. I thought it would be important for you to know my background, though, because I would be assigned your project if you decided to partner with us. So on the screen right now is our team that you'd be hiring, our owner, who started the company 22 years ago, Bill Foster. We have a PhD researcher on our team who helps us study the data, study the trends, and give you sound research behind our tools. And then Carrie and I would be rolling out your survey, handling all of the aspects of printing, communications, and all of those things. But largely, it would be me working with Peter and Marcy, writing your survey from beginning to end, from the very first word to the very end, where I give you a board report of findings so that you can determine next steps. We call it, you're not going to referendum with us, you're going to survey so you can shape your referendum around the community messaging, the community support that we measure for you in the reaction to the survey. So a little background of our company. We've been in existence 22 years. We've done over 10,000 staff, student, and parent surveys in all 50 states. And now we've just topped the 1,000 district mark as far as districts we've helped in all 50 states with the referendum process, with levy process, whether it's operating levy, capital levy, a bond referendum is such that you have in Minnesota. So why would you do a survey? Why would you even consider this process? Well, the reality of it is a survey is less a survey with us. It's more of an interactive newsletter. You're educating your community about the current conditions in the school district. You're gathering data, understanding what the community's financial and educational priorities are, and you're going to help establish a tax tolerance so that you go to ballot with good data, understanding where you have support and where you don't have support. A good example is my district back in 2016. My third year as superintendent, we were mulling a performing arts center, a theater, because we had this glorified gym with a stage in it, and it wasn't meeting the needs of sports very well or the fine arts. School board was dead set against approaching the community because they said they knew this community will never build a facility. But we had the survey, so let's ask the question. Guess what? There's an 810-seat, $12 million performing arts center in my old district now that the community shockingly said it's overdue. Let's do this. So we help you do more than assume. We help you understand what your community is feeling here and now about your district. So then along the way, we don't just survey asking for money. We ask overall satisfaction metrics. We have a core baseline of questions that we ask with every district we work with, as I said, in all 50 states, and we'll be able to compare your data to other districts, your size, your demographic, and tell you how you compare to others. Not just gather isolated data, but compare it to nationwide data on how other districts are doing as far as satisfaction with financial management, satisfaction with educational services, things of that nature. Bottom line is people are more likely to support a plan if they understand the plan, and that's where that interactive newsletter comes in, and if they have a voice in creating the plan. So what is our approach? Ours is rather unique. Statistically speaking, our research director will stand behind this. A random sample can be statistically reliable, absolutely. We don't philosophically as a company believe that that is the approach we want to take on behalf of communities and on behalf of directors and school board leaders. We do an all-inclusive survey. Every property in the school district will be mailed a survey. Every member of your community will be able to take the survey. So for example, we just wrapped up Cedar Rapids, Iowa. 69,000 surveys went out on behalf of a district of 19,000 kids, and we gathered that data and summarized their $220 million question and gave them feedback on where they have support and where they did not have support, so they could shape their referendum around exactly what their community told them. We believe everyone, no matter how wealthy, how poor, young family, senior citizen, should have an opportunity to weigh in on the future of the school district where they reside. We do not use the phone with our approach. What it is, it's a paper survey. So how do they take the survey? One is mailed to every household, just one to every household. If there's a husband and wife that maybe disagree, all they have to do is call the district office and get an extra paper survey, or 70% of our survey takers choose to do it electronically through our website. We provide alphanumeric codes to the district, and each survey then can be taken once and only once, so there's no opportunity for ballot stuffing. And they can get an extra code or an extra survey by calling the district office. We do not flood the district office with work. I think even Cedar Rapids, Iowa had 19 people call for an extra code because generally speaking, the household opinion was bore out by the person filling out the survey on behalf of the house. Okay. So 70% will fill it out online. Roughly 30% will take it via paper, depending on the community. Maybe further up north in northern North Dakota where we've done some, it's more of a 50-50 type of a proposition. We've had some as high as 90% electronic and 10% paper, but it's nice to give them the option to take it the way they want to. They can take it on their smartphone or they can huddle up with it over a cup of coffee and fill it out by hand. So what does a survey look like? No survey that we've ever done is look the same. They're completely customized. You tell us the questions you want, we write it, we decorate it with your logos and your school colors, make it look like you, feel like you, but most importantly, sound like you. And then within a few weeks, we send it to the printer. We have a stable of printers that know exactly our expectations of how the survey is folded, stapled, mailed. We take care of all that for you. And we customize it to meet your needs. Any questions you've been wondering specific to Brainerd, we'll put in there. You tell us what you want to ask. We have baseline questions that have that comparison group, but if there's unique things that are very specific, we had a district, huge open enrollment losers, and they just wanted to ask, why are we losing so many kids to open enrollment? We just launched a survey to ask them why. And we're gathering all those reasons so they can reverse that trend and address those things head on. Here's some samples of how a survey would look, just so you can put it. There's always an opening letter, clearly from you with your logo on it, explaining the survey. I will warn you, we're not wordy people. We write briefly, every man's terms. We don't talk about 21st century learning communities. We don't talk about STEM, STEAM. We call it SHOP if we're asking for remodeling of the tech ed area because we need everyone to understand what we're talking about. There's a lot of educational lingo out there. We're not here to confuse. We're here to simplify and educate and gather input on things that they understand. This is an example of the box where we inform them of the 2 ways that they can take the survey. First one being online, the second one via paper. We compile, input all the results for you. You don't lift a finger until we come back with your PowerPoint summarizing the findings and deciding, are you going to write a resolution or not? Very clearly articulate what the due date is. We have disaggregated information so we can break it out by their age, are they a resident or a non-resident? Because we do gather input from your open enrollment parents because they are choosing to come to Brainerd for a reason. But then we disaggregate out their data as far as taxpayer and voter projections because they can't vote. So we want to know how they feel, and we want to know how your staff feel. But if they're not voters, then when we give you a projection of what the vote likely would look like in November, then we pull them out. We break out by municipality. I had the challenge in my district of a couple of the municipalities that had gone to ballot already and passed tax increases for an ambulance center or for a remodeling of the city hall. Well, we needed to know that because we were also talking about tax increase, and we broke out the data by municipality. And then we asked them how they want to hear back from you. So one thing to survey, a mistake that's often made is districts are good at gathering survey data. They're not always so good about communicating it back. We'll help you with that. We'll provide documents that allow you to report back to them. We asked, this is what you told us. And we'll also find out the preferred modality. Some people prefer a website, some prefer email, some like to get a Facebook update. We'll find out from your parents how they want to hear from you about the survey results and day-to-day, just their regular school news, school closings, all those kinds of things. Any other questions you're wondering about? If you have future capacity concerns, here's an example of a district we worked with last year that had projections of overgrowing their buildings, and they needed to prepare the community for a rising student population that needed a new elementary school and a new grade configuration. Sometimes districts come to us, so I'm working with Sauk Rapids Rice right now. They have some expiring debt, and they see an opportunity to do some more bond work without any tax increase. They can just reinvest the current levy into reshaping some of their buildings and maybe at a slight tax decrease and in reinvesting those bond dollars that are already committed as they expire. So we educate about why we're asking now and why the timing is right to reconsider a new question. We try to make it simple, check boxes, very clearly articulating what the question is. If it's a bond referendum, we work with architecture and construction partners to put imagery in front of them so everyone understands what building is being talked about and what the new wings of the building would look like and where they're located. Another example of that, we partner with architects all the time on this because image is worth 1,000 words in the world of surveying. Another example, sometimes we ask for input on how to reconfigure grade levels where we have overcrowding, or sometimes what's facing a lot of schools in Minnesota and in Wisconsin are facing is downsizing and having to right-size schools because it's getting too costly to operate schools that aren't at maximum efficiency and maybe only have 60% capacity. And then ultimately, what Peter referenced before, we do a tax tolerance chart. We'll help you if you're wondering this amount versus this amount versus this amount. We'll put all the different tax implications in front of your taxpayers and let them react. I just did a project in Crosby Ironton where they needed operating levy dollars, and we put a good, better, and best scenario in front of their taxpayers and said, which of these would you support? And this is what's at stake at each threshold as far as what programs could be maintained, what programs could be reinstated, or what programs could be added. And the taxpayers reacted, and now they're going to ballot with informed data about what their operating levy will look like. Again, just some samples of different surveys we've done. And this is a good example of a tax tolerance chart where we break it out for them by year, by month, on how much of a tax increase they would be facing at each threshold of $2 million increment increases to spell it out for them. And we find that the sweet spot where the support and the dollars intersect. Timeline to keep in mind. Overall, we have to be careful about gathering the data early enough that you can meet the 90-day deadline for writing the resolution and getting it on the ballot, but not so far in advance that people forget what the question was. We have found a year is too far in advance. 6 months is the perfect time to survey because then we can gather the data, report back to you. You have time as a board to mull, what are we gonna put on the ballot? Sometimes it's crystal clear and can be done the same night that I give my report. Other times it may take a couple of meetings because maybe it's a 50-50 proposition and you wanna be sure you put something on the ballot that passes, because with some of these operating levies, you're talking about jobs and maybe in some cases dozens of jobs if the levy doesn't pass. So typically it takes us 4 to 6 weeks to write the survey. From there, it's 8 weeks start to finish. 2 to 3 weeks to print it. 3-week window, and we prefer 3 weekends because people tend to take surveys on the weekends when they're getting their groceries, paying their bills, and catching up on their personal life in between chasing their kids to soccer and doing all the busy things that come with parenting today. But I will also tell you, 75% of your community does not work at the school and does not have kids in school. That's the group that's going to make or break the question. That's the group we really, really need to hear from, because 3 out of 4 of your voters aren't directly impacted by the school, but you'll need their support with whatever question it is that you're going to ask at the ballot box. So we have it open for 3 weeks and 3 weekends, and then it takes us a week and a half to 2 weeks to compile your findings and report them back to you. Sometimes longer depending on the number of comments, because we do offer free-form comments, and it takes us a while to read all of those comments and report back to you the common themes that come from those comments, because sometimes there's a very long narrative, 3 pages long, but that's just one voter, and that may not represent the masses. We study what are the most common 7 to 10 themes that came out of the survey so that you know what the masses are feeling, not necessarily just the one-off that's very angry about a gym or something that has just been bothering them for years. So typically, that's the timeline that we follow. I'll give you a sample timeline to meet a November vote. Now, I heard Peter say November 26. I developed this just to give you an idea of a November 25 in mind. We would start writing the survey January, February. You would be the final word on the survey while we'd be on the front lines working with Peter and Marcy, most likely. Ultimately, superintendents and business officials put the final survey in front of the board, because the last thing we want you as a board is to be sideswiped by the wording of a question on the survey or a line of questioning that we introduced on the survey, you're going to get stopped at the grocery store wondering, tell me more about this before I complete my survey. Then we would finalize it, send it to print in March, have it open in early April, close at the end of April, have findings to you by May so that you can make a decision June or July to meet that resolution deadline and that 90-day mark for having something on the ballot.
Darren, we would be doing 2025.
You would be.
Because we would need if this all works out, then the funding would begin in 26.
Understood. Okay, when you said 26, I wasn't sure if that was the survey launch. So yeah, this is the exact timeline we would follow. Very proactive. The fact that Peter Marcy reached out to us now, it's great timing because we can start having conversations about your needs, but we probably wouldn't start writing the survey until right after the new year and just make sure that it captures where the district is right there at that moment. As I said, we've done over 1,000 of these over the last 22 years. We'd be thrilled to partner with you, but at the minimum, I'm just honored to make the trip up to Brainerd and to talk to you about our product. I'm proud to work for the company because I really believe in the process. It helped transform my district from having 5 archaic buildings to 5 modern facilities with secure entrances, security cameras, and all the latest safety technology, and one of the leading tech ed departments in the state of Wisconsin now. After the remodel that our community stood behind. And so it's exciting for me to work with districts and help them transform their districts and take them to that next level that they're seeking to find. So any questions you have for me, I've done way too much talking. I'm much better being asked questions.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
What's the response rate typically?
Great. Glad you asked. 18%.
Okay.
So it depends. What you'll find, bigger districts maybe have a smaller percentage because for whatever reason, bigger districts get a lower percent of a response rate. I just did a district in northern Wisconsin last fall. They had 46% response rate because they're the largest employer in town. And everyone is really paying very close attention to their operating question. But I would tell you, I just am writing Sauk Rapids Rice report right now. Typically, we have a dip in the return rate in the summer because people are busy at 25%. In their district, slightly smaller than you, but 5,500 kids. So they got a great response to their bond questions. Any other questions?
I like the idea of keeping it simple. Sometimes people tend not to fill stuff out if they got to go through a lot of hoops and do a lot of reading. So
That was my steepest learning curve, sir. I was writing like a superintendent, and my boss, who's a plastics engineer, abruptly quit that role because he didn't find making gas caps rewarding, and he invented this company. He went to work as a teacher's aide for a year to get into his schools, and he said, I've got an idea about how to help schools. So that's where this company came from. And he kind of said, Darren, people don't know what you mean by using that term. So he really coached me these last 2 years on how to get the wording just right. And he reads every survey before it's done because he knows what he's looking for as the president and owner of our company. So you got to keep it simple.
Good.
Speak a little bit to the audience. You said it goes to each household, and then you talked a little bit about wanting to know also what staff know and feel, even if
Yes.
they're not in the district.
Yes.
How do you disseminate that letter, or does it get mailed to their household as well? What are the mailing?
Everyone gets the exact same survey. Just what we do is not only do we have that PhD researcher behind the scenes, we have a PhD computer software engineer who writes the program for us. With a click of a button, we can gather all the data just from the staff, just the resident staff, resident parents, non-resident parents. We can disaggregate it by any subgroup that you want to study. And that's how we're able to just send the same survey to everyone else, but have a different complexion of the survey based on who they are. So the wording
You
is
could
the
even
same.
support that, or filter that by other demographics, like municipalities and stuff like that.
You name it. One group that we watch very closely, 65 plus. Very sensitive, as you are as a board, to the fact that they're retired, they're on a fixed income, and any new tax, they're sensitive to because they can't go out and get a raise if they're living on Social Security. And we try to be very sensitive to that. We watch that group very closely. We watch the young parents very closely because we understand that they may still not have been able to come up with that 20% down to buy their first house. And so we'll help you study all those demographics. Our software converts the survey to 52 different languages at the push of a button. So if you have a second language population, sometimes we have Hmong, sometimes we have Chinese. Most common, obviously, no surprise that'd be Spanish, but we'll translate the survey for you. So you don't have to do a thing there as well.
Okay, so the loaded question.
Sure.
When you do your own self-analysis and write your own report cards on your, let's say your batting average, on
Yes.
when you provide the data, I mean, how do you, a little bit about how you measure that and how do you do?
Yeah, we don't measure, I'll be very clear, because sometimes I meet with boards and they think I actually got teased about this when I took the position by my fellow superintendents in southeastern Wisconsin. You're gonna go sell referendums with Bill Foster. This company does not believe that we're selling referendums. We are an independent, third-party research firm that's gonna inform on a potential referendum. We measure success on not if it passes or fails. We measure success on whether our data matches up with what happens at the ballot box with whatever you decide using our data. So for example, 8 miles away from me back when I was in my rookie year superintendent, neighboring district had support data for a $60 million remodel. The superintendent said, and the board said, we think we can get 120 and get the whole banana at one time. It failed. We counted that as we were right because we had support for 60. And our owner even warned them. He said, if you put 120 on there and it fails, you may not get 60 the next go around because what you've done is you did a survey knowing what you were gonna do all along and you didn't listen to the data. That's our company line. Listen to your data. You hired us to gather data, listen to your data. Otherwise, you're gonna alienate your taxpayers. They went back to ballot a year later with 60 and that failed too. And they had to settle for 38 and endure 2 years of construction inflation, and 38 million didn't build them what 38 million would have built them 2 years earlier. So answer your question, 94%. 94% of the
Based on
time,
your metrics, which makes sense.
which means if we say it'll pass and they put the question exactly as worded in the survey on the ballot, it has passed. But also we count it a win if we say you don't have support, we don't advise you to go to the polls right now. If our data holds up, then we count that as a win because we want to be reliable for you. We don't want to pass it for you. We want to inform on your behalf, gather feedback on your behalf, and give you good guidance on what to put on the ballot. So we really want to pride ourselves on being reliable. We're 101 for 102 in Minnesota. The only time we were wrong in Minnesota, they changed the dollar amount between survey. They asked for a couple million more. And you'd be surprised. I had another project in Wisconsin, near Eau Claire. 22 million was supported. They tried to squeeze out 25 and it failed.
Don't have to name it, but was that district in Minnesota anywhere near here?
No, and I pride myself on our confidentiality. I try to learn from experience, but I will never talk about other districts by name. No. So really, really handy. I will tell you, I will talk about my old district. I would tell you that not only was the prediction 70-30 on the 5 secure entrances, but that's exactly what the voter turnout was. It was not only did it pass, but it was within 1% of the survey projection. That's what the voter response was. And the nice thing is, with that Performing Arts Center, we were hovering around 52-48. Came back to the architect and said, it's awfully close to call because we'll give you a margin for error too based on the number of surveys returned, okay? So that you can plus or minus by 1% or 2. Our architect went back to the drawing board and said, it's not a shoo-in. So he redesigned it, shaved a couple million off, took the balcony off because it was fancy, but wasn't necessary, made it stadium style, and the redesign passed 60-40 because it dropped from 11.5 million to 9.9. It got under that $10 million mark, something psychological about that too, just a little bit more reasonable. Showed them what I took the show on the road and explained to them at Lions, at Rotary, at PTO meetings and explained to them, we heard you. It's a little rich for this community's blood. We're gonna make the Performing Arts Center a little bit lighter in the budget, and it passed. So that's how you can use that reliability data to reshape your decision-making. It doesn't have to be word for word. You can change scope based on the data we're gonna provide.
Based on the data that you get, do you ever recommend not proceeding with?
We do. We do. We do it all the time. It's hard. Yes, we highly recommend it, in fact, because again, it sends a tough message to the community. Now, if it's 50-50, the messaging can be, we're gonna turn it over to the taxpayers to decide. But if it's 45-55, 45 yes, 55 no, or in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Iowa, where it's gotta be a supermajority, 60% to pass, we've given very clear guidance about that. You've gotta be very careful, because if you're hovering around 52-48 and you need a supermajority, you're not even close. Now, you may ask, what about that 6% where you've been wrong? The majority of the time, that's been when something unexpected happened behind the scenes between survey and the vote. A no committee went out and put signs in yards saying, don't support that tax increase. I had that happen with the district in Wisconsin this spring, where the anti-tax group came out and it was 51-49 already. We said, we think it could pass, but the no group came out and it went down in flames, because then things are being revealed about administrative salaries and all kinds of ugliness. We can't anticipate that reaction once a tax increase is put out in our survey form. We also had another district where they had glowing support, and then the properties were reassessed and everyone endured a 30% tax increase. And then it went down in flames because the numbers we set in the survey changed dramatically, and then the amount of property tax increase and the level of property tax from the school on their bill changed dramatically because of the reassessment. Sometimes there's things that we can't predict, but we've taken a very close eye and talked to municipalities intentionally to make sure there's not something like that happens in between, because then they just wasted the survey, because the data in the survey was very different than what ended up being on the ballot. Great questions. Yeah.
Any others? You?
Well, I suppose we should ask, what's this gonna cost?
Yeah, this survey now from front to back, I don't have the proposal in my hand. I believe what I sent you, Peter, was $10,700 for us services from the very first written word all the way to reporting the findings back to you is a school board. So the writing, so there's phases. There's the planning, writing, launching, and reporting back are the 4 phases of our services. The costs that are independent of us that you would need to pay for over and above that would be printing. And I did get a quote to the district based on 24,000 surveys. That's the number we got from your community education director. I'm worried that might be a little steep. My district in Wisconsin was 419th out of 423 per pupil expenditures in the state of Wisconsin, so we had to operate on a very lean budget. So I've brought that. I can't shake that mindset. I can't spend district's money lightly. I would urge you that we may want to take a look at that mailing list and make sure there's not too many doubles and triples. Community your size, for example, Sauk Rapids Rice, they have 5,500 kids, and we launched 11,146 surveys. So I'd be surprised if that list didn't have an awful lot of redundancy in it. We have a company that works for us that for $200 to $300 would do a brand new mailing list of all the current property owners in this district based on a Google map and your school boundaries. For $200 to $300, that's yours to keep from that point forward for any future newsletters, for the follow-up after the survey that Peter may write and saying, this is what our board is thinking going into November of 25, however you plan to do that. People really appreciate that follow-up in hand, though. I would tell you newsletters are still, there's something old school and very popular about getting something in the mail from the school. So that would be on you. As I said, 24,000 was $8,000 to print 24,000. So if you do that by scale, let's say you're slightly bigger than Sauk Rapids Rice, let's call it 15,000. You'd be around 6,000 front to back to print it. And so on. And then you do get charged 6 cents per survey for when it's a business reply envelope back to our headquarters. That's a little tricky to gauge, but if you use our stats at 30%, do the paper version, 30% of roughly 15,000, that's how many times 6 cents the post office is going to bill you for that reply envelope. So postage and printing is yours. We do everything else, though. And we have a stable of printers that really love the idea that we did 75 of these projects this spring alone, which was a company record. The previous high we've ever done in a semester is 43. Just had that many districts in Minnesota and Wisconsin trying to get on the November ballot. Which, by the way, November is the best time in Wisconsin to put a referendum on the ballot, and it's the worst time in Minnesota to put it on the ballot, even though we're only separated by a river. Our PhD researcher has studied it, and passage rates go up in Wisconsin based on voter turnout. Minnesota voter turnout makes referendums fail at a higher rate. I don't know what the difference is. But he studied it all the way back to our infancy and found that the presidential election, the prime time of Wisconsin, so that's why we were swamped with
Well,
Wisconsin.
that's the question I was gonna ask. Is that irrespective of what the other general election cycles are doing, or is it specific to a presidential election cycle?
Presidential election, but,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
because of the turnout was so high
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
presidential.
No,
election.
anecdotally through MSBA and other things, sessions we've been to, they all said, stay away from it in November of '24.
Yeah, unless you're Wisconsin district, and they all just piled up this spring. But so yeah, that is something to keep in mind. And I think you talking about putting this out there the following November, then that fits with the data that we've gathered on behalf of Minnesota.
So we'd be looking at 10,700 plus printing, and if we wanted to develop a new mailing list using your
$200-300.
$200 to $300. Okay.
You're gonna be. I would
And
tell
what
you,
did
you're
what did
well.
we
You'd
come
be
up with?
well under 20,000.
What did we come up with as far as a mailing list through Community Ed? 20?
24,000 was I was given. It just seemed, the only thing I'm basing that on is the fact that we just did Sauk Rapids Rice, which is 50, I think you're 6,300 kids, Peter, roughly? We just did Sauk Rapids Rice, which is 5,500, and that was less than 12,000 surveys mailed. I was just so surprised that you'd be double, even though you only have 800 more kids. But you also have a ton of, you pull from a broad region, and that may have something to do, we study your census data as far as how many school-age children you'd have and how many, that may be indicative of how many retirees want to be up here and live up here but don't have kids in the system. So it could be right. I don't want to doubt your community ed director in any way, shape, or form. I just don't want to send more than one survey to each home, because that's district money that we're spending on your behalf. So I think it's just worth a further conversation if you decide to partner with us, we'd study that in the fall. And it might be worth the $200 to $300 just to refresh that mailing list. Almost every district we work with are like, wow, that's pretty cheap to make sure we'd get that back in one mailing if we're not double mailing things at a high rate.
What's your average postage rate on a survey?
You know,
It's quantity based, I'm sure.
yes, yeah, I can't quote you on that, but it's shocking. I'm shocked at how reasonable it is, yeah.
So you would recommend using your printers?
I would,
the way we have
the reason, because of two things. I would say yes, unless you have a reliable printer locally. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. In my district, our Rotary president and his wife own the local print shop, and they're glad to do a very reasonable print job for us as almost like a donation to the community. So if you have a relationship like that, great. I would tell you we have 7 or 8 in our stable of printers, though, that can finish our census for us as far as the printing process. I just have to send them a file that's approved by district administration and the board. So there's something to be said for the efficiencies we gain by using experienced printers that have done this for us for the last 15, 20 years.
So is R.R. Donnelly in your stable? R.R. Donnelly?
No.
Okay.
No.
There's
Most of them?
the largest print shop, and they're in Milwaukee of all places, so.
No.
So, I mean, we can certainly investigate that. I mean, that's part of my business is printing and mailing tax forms, so we've done a lot of research on that.
Quad Graphics is down there too, which does some high-end magazines. Sometimes our products are, because we also try to cross-negotiate, save the district some money, and some of those bigger boys, it's just not worth it to them. We tend to go with these more medium-sized shops that just love the steady stream of work that we can provide them.
Well, the nice thing is what you've got is, I mean, it's a static thing that's going out to everybody.
Right.
It's not variable, right? So you don't need as sophisticated a print vendor to do something where let's say you're sending them a zip file with 27,000 PDF files that they have to print and mail or something like that.
Correct. It's on 11 by 17 sheet, folded over, center stapled, and then tabbed, and then it just reads like a book. opening letter from the superintendent.
Okay, so it's got like the perforated tab that you can just slide it, like letter opener or whatever.
Typically, the opening letter comes from the superintendent and school board as a unified leadership group. Other times, sometimes it's just the school board president. Maybe if they've been a long tenured president that just has such credibility, he says, no, I want this to come from me. And
Yeah, that's not the case here.
and so, yeah, so that you will tell us who it's from and how all of that goes. And so,
Credible, but not long-term.
okay, very good, very good.
We'll have another meeting about that.
Yeah. So, what else? What else do you need to know about
Any other
school
questions?
perceptions?
That was extremely comprehensive
Yes, it
and
was.
useful.
Very
Thank you
good.
very much. Really appreciate your
Yeah.
support.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darren.
Very, very
I'm gonna
good.
step out and see if Peter's here.
So Peter reached out?
Okay.
Yes, and he had it on his agenda for next Monday.
Uh-oh.
Darcy, go ahead.
Just a real quick update, our other presenter did put the wrong date on the calendar, so, he did say that he could join virtually if you guys would like, but he does not have access to his presentation. He would just talk about the company, so I kinda leaving it up to,
What do you think, Superintendent Grant?
Yep, that's,
I'm not very thrilled. We were quite explicit.
Bad optics.
You know what I
Yeah.
would like to do is I'm going to dismiss myself.
Yep,
because I
that's
don't
fine.
We refer to that as a timely recusal.
I'm not trying to get back to Lake City. I just think you'll talk more honestly if I. So,
Thanks again.
Thank
yeah, my
you.
pleasure.
thank you.
All right, take care.
I don't know.
Well, what I would say is there's familiarity with the Morris Leatherman model, right? You've been through it. I've studied it a fair bit as we were looking at this process 2 years ago. MSBA had Peter come and present data and explain, like in breakout sessions. So we have a gist of it. So I would say to have him just do an overview of the company. What I think we would like is a detailed proposal that kind of explains what they offer and how much it would cost for a cost comparison's sake. Because their model, Peter, you can speak to it better than I can, is quite different in terms of how they gather data.
Theirs is a telephone survey, and they will pick out of 20,000 residents, whatever it is, a specific number of people to call. It's a typical political survey, really. I mean, you think about surveys that are done across the country, they only talk to 1,800 people out of 300 million, whatever. Peter said that probably they would do 400 survey calls. They call until they get the 400 though. They keep calling until they get the number that they want. Their accuracy on response is about the same as school perceptions, but their data is totally different. They'll start asking questions on the survey, and then depending what the answer is, they might go a little bit a level deeper and find out, well, what did you mean by that? And so that they can glean more information from the caller or from the person taking the survey. Survey lasts about 8 to 10 minutes, and then they collect all that data very similar to what Perceptions does then and put it all in a pocket for us and so forth. They're highly regarded as one of the best in the state of Minnesota. They do this constantly throughout the state. So it's really not apples and oranges, but the phone survey is significantly different because they probe a little bit deeper than what a paper survey might do. The key to the whole thing is they're not cheap. They're going to be double.
All right, so from a timeline perspective, I mean, I think, given that we're missing 2 board members tonight, and we don't have a looming shot clock on this, the timetable is good. It's good that we're having these conversations now. We don't have to make a decision tonight. It's not like we are behind the 8 ball suddenly if we don't. So, I mean, I think we have the option of, at minimum, I don't know that we want to kick it I guess we kick it to the next board meeting for a decision, and I guess we could have Peter back if we want to, or he could create some kind of virtual presentation for us. But I don't love the optics on that, having one that's not in the public eye where only the board members would get it.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem fair to me. So, I mean, yeah, I would agree with you. But again, remember, you saw the timeline he put up on his PowerPoint. We don't really have to decide what we're going to do until like
And they,
February, really.
and they both had similar timelines,
Yep,
so
yeah.
there was no difference there. The
So I guess
big-
where my head goes is to essentially table this, and then we can kind of regroup and set the agenda and decide if we want to let Mr. Letterman come back in and show us his wares. But I do think cost consciousness is a big deal. And then to your point, I love the idea that they will go beyond what the initial survey that these guys do, but in my mind, we sort of already did that level of probing with the strategic plan sessions that we did last year. So I'm not sure.
But that wasn't spending money though.
Well, what I'm saying is we gathered some of that same data that they would
Okay,
get.
yep, okay.
I'm trying to rectify spending an extra $20,000,
Right.
you know, on asking 2 more questions after somebody says, I don't like the pizza in the lunchroom. You know, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I mean, they're gonna probe and they're gonna go deeper under the surface of what that, you know, it's probably more something like, well, I don't like the building. Well, what about the building don't you like? Well, the entrance. Well, what about the entrance don't you like? Where the paper survey is what it is. So at minimum, I think we should see the presentation.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly.
And then at least DJ and John have the ability to go back and watch the recording of this board meeting and they can see what Darren presented. I think that, in my mind, is the route to go. What do
I
you
think
think?
that's fine, that's fine.
Because in the end, I mean, I think we're gonna lean into what you and Marcy end up really thinking. I mean, at least I will.
Well,
because-
and Marcy and I have talked to me, we're quite concerned about the cost. Especially in front of the public when we're gonna ask them for money in 2025. Then we're doubling the cost for something that we can get cheaper. It's just, that doesn't make good common sense.
Well, and there's something to be said for, again, we've talked about this in other contexts, and it came up, when people are doing these phone surveys, you know, I don't know what kind of buckets they're trying to fill demographically,
Yeah.
right? Because that presumes they have a database with phone numbers in it. My phone number's not in a database that somebody's got access to.
How do you know? That's the thing, I mean, that's.
Because it's
I
an
mean,
election year and nobody's called me.
No, I'm not trying to be.
No, that's what
mean,
I'm saying, is you would know,
it's-
because you
yeah.
get these calls
Okay,
and these
okay.
text messages,
Okay.
right? So if you put your cell phone number on your voter registration, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and then if they're gonna be calling, I mean, are they gonna be calling landlines or are they be calling cell phones?
Most of it's gonna be cell phone. Because about 75% of the community has cell phone without landline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well, so, I mean, it's listed as an action item, we did that on purpose.
Yep.
When we were playing with the agenda, we were first gonna do this as informational, and we decided to make it an action item in case we had a compelling 2 presentations and just wanted to move, but obviously, we had 2 directors that didn't make it, and 1 presenter that didn't make it, so, I would say, for lack of a motion, unless somebody wants to make a motion on this, it can just sit there, and then that effectively tables it, I think, until next meeting, if that's okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, nobody makes a motion, it's a done
No,
deal.
there's no motion,
No
so
motion,
it's
so,
no
yeah.
longer an action item, it's an
That's
action
correct.
item that didn't get action on it.
That's right. Okay,
Okay, so let's move along to thank you, Marcy. Let's move along to the next action item, which is the approval of the ratification of the AFS CME interpreters contract for the 2024-25 school year and next year, the 25-26 school year. Angie Bennett, I guess you're up here for a little while.
I'm up here for 3 items, so I'll just knock them out really quick. The first one, I believe, is the AFSME. Is that what you had said with the interpreter contract? So I had sent you guys a little bit of a summary of what was changed for that. The salary scale is probably the biggest change for that. We used to have 3 different components, a non-certified, a compliant, and a certified. We have now switched to non-certified and certified. And kind of got rid of that compliant sector, and I won't go through all the testing with you unless you really want to know on how we make those determinations. We did do an increase for both 24-25 and 25-26. The other layer that we added on that is those who receive the National Interpreter Certification from RID get a stipend similar to that of the National Certification for Teachers. They get $1,000 for the year as long as they hold that certification. The good news is this is our last non-exempt group to join TrueTime. So we are getting them on the TrueTime to now record their hours. They're still being paid annualized, but at least we'll have a really accurate record of hours and overtime and such. So we're really excited about that. And then just some cleanup really with language, adding ESST, all that good stuff.
I'll make a motion, we approve the AFSCME interpreters contract for 24, 25, and 25, 26.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Spear to approve the contract as presented. Any other questions for Angie or discussion?
Just
Dr.
a,
Hayden, Director Hayden, not
just,
Doctor.
just a question. Angie, is this a budgeted item? Is it already in the budget, or is this gonna, so this is not gonna add to any deficit?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up, Angie, is the approval of the ratification of the Brainerd Principal and Assistant Principals Association for the 2024-25 and 25-26 school years as presented.
Yep, so not a lot of significant changes in this contract. We did do a wage salary increase for both years. We did also add longevity payments. There was a request for that, and we were able to work that into it. So if they're here for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we're giving them additional incentive for longevity. Increased 403B match for $500 per year, and then it's just language cleanup after that.
And then I was involved in this too with Angie, so you can correct anything I say that's maybe.
Sure.
But basically, this fits within the previously allocated budget dollars. We just had to go back and forth a few times to kind of bounce different numbers around to make it fit the way everybody felt was best.
So it doesn't add, nothing, cool. That was a question that I had, so that was answered.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the Principals and Assistant Principals Association contracts for the next 2 school years. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. And next up is the approval and first and/or final reading of Policy 722, Public Data and Data Subject Requests.
So this policy was brought to the policy committee last month, and we reviewed kind of the intent of it, which is basically to be really transparent with the public and how we handle data requests, create a consistent procedure, kind of give further explanation to the public of what we need in the request, how we're going to handle those requests, any fees tied with such request. So this is just some additional explanation. We've been following the majority of this. The one area we did clarify more was the fees that we're associating with, so it can be applied consistently amongst any type of group or individual that requests data.
Perfect.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the first and final reading of MSBA Policy 722 and 722F.
Second.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Heidman to approve the motion as, or the policy as presented. Any further discussion? Again, Director Heidman and I, more you, because I missed part of that meeting, but I mean, there was nothing particular. It was
Nothing.
just nice. It's streamlining and adding
Yeah.
more,
And,
just simplicity to make it easier for people to understand how the process works.
and more sunshine on fees and stuff like that.
Right.
So people don't get shocked, you know, they want a data request and it's 20 pages. Well, you know, it's gonna cost some money.
Right.
It's just,
Yep.
yeah, so.
Very good. Okay, all right, so hearing no further discussion, then those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Dr. Stelmach with the approval of the resolution of establishing the Baxter Elementary School Forest. I inspected it a couple of months ago. There are no fairies or anything interesting. It's just trees mostly. I was hoping for hobbits or something, but.
All right, well, good evening, and thank you for fitting us on. I've got one of my teachers with me tonight, Blake Allholm. He's a 3rd grade teacher this year in my building, and he's a member of our school forest committee. So he's here just to speak to some of the pieces that we feel like would be beneficial to have and establish a school forest. And we met in May. You were at that one, Kevin, and I believe DJ was, just to be talking through some of the benefits, what are the pros and the cons of establishing a school forest. And we really couldn't land on any cons, and the benefits of a school forest were many. So We've gone through that research phase and put together a committee, and we really believe that it would be beneficial to our district to have Baxter Elementary School have a school forest. I was a part of the Dean Mackey School Forest when that came about as a district, and it really has, the benefits are that there's some free education for staff. We will use the property as a school forest either way, but if you can become certified and declared as a school forest, there are the training benefits, there are some resources that you have available. Our local forester, Steve Bartz, he will do some drawings for us. He'll do some, there's a word that's escaping me right now. Well, he'll put together he's already mapped it out, but he puts together additional information on the space within the forest. And Blake maybe could speak to some of the ways that we believe staff can get out and use that outdoor learning environment.
Yeah, I guess I'm new to this whole school forest thing, but envisioning of how I would utilize that in a third grade classroom is kind of two different separate things. The obvious one is a science-based. I mean, one of our units is plants and animals, and instead of having to use digital resources, I mean, we have access to that physical hands-on learning right there, whether we're viewing birds, whether we're looking at plants and identifying them, so forth. And the school forest also provides, a different environment for kids. We're trapped in the classroom all winter, it seems like, and having a school forest would give teachers that ability to take kids out. And it doesn't necessarily have to be science-based. It could be going out there to read a book. It could be going out there just to do a math assignment, just changing that venue for kids. I think is huge when you're thinking of social, emotional, and instead of just being in the classroom all the time, it's giving kids a different environment for learning, and that could be a huge benefit to some of our kids for sure.
I was actually at that presentation, Dr. Stomach, when you presented, I think it was to the long-range planning committee.
Yes.
But what I was really impressed with also was the relationship with DNR and the educational opportunities that will be provided by that collaboration. So that was.
I would say that's pretty huge too, as somebody as teachers who are kind of new to that and not sure how to utilize it, to get that DNR service in to teach us how to best utilize it is really beneficial for sure.
I mean, in a nutshell, it's getting free resources from, not free, but state resources that don't come out of the district coffers to augment a lot of things that we would like to do with property we already own. And then, Dr. Stelmach, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody brought this up to me, and I just want to make sure I reiterate this for anybody that's watching. We own the land, it's designated as a school forest, but if for some reason we suddenly had to build a garage or something on that land, we're not precluded or limited from doing that, right?
Correct.
There's no limitation on the use of the land as far as it goes.
No, we own the land, and right now Steve Bartz has worked with us, and you see it in the resolution that he's mapped out the land markers for where the school forest would be. Now, we've got more land on that site that is our building and our parking lot and things like that. So if we needed to change anything within the land denoted as a school forest down the road, the district has full access to do so because we own it. What they would probably ask for is a simple addendum to the dimensions of the school forest, and it might take out a path through it, for example, if we needed to put a road, or if we put a road on the north side where it's already semi-cleared behind those buildings and you want to move it over a foot, it would be a very easy addendum that Steve would probably very conveniently help us write. It would just be changing the dimensions just slightly.
Perfect. So that when I went into that original meeting with you guys, that was my biggest thing, was the con I was looking for was,
Right.
well, what happens if something changes? And now we've got all these designations and the state government's somehow involved in all this, but the reality is it's still our space.
Right.
We had, correct me or refresh, who came in and cut those trails for us?
Yes, we have a family member, Landworks is a local business, and they do have a representative on. You can see the members of our school forest committee. So they are parents that serve in the capacity of our PTO representative, as well as, I believe, Landworks. Jeff would probably know better than myself, but I think Landworks does some of like our sweeping or our stuff in the sidewalks. And so they graciously donated their services for a very nominal fee to PTO to cut through forests in the land. So
Now
I
we have these
think what
great
we've
trails
always
back through
said,
there. I got to go walk through them.
it's amazing. And what we've always said is we're going to use the land because we own it either way. If we choose to move forward and the application is ready for a school forest, then there's some benefits and some training we get along with it. But we plan to use the land because we own it. So if that makes sense.
Director Heidman, looked like you might add a question.
Yeah, we control it, the forest.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any possibility of the state coming in and saying, you know what? You gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta spend some money, do this, do that. I mean, any kind of unfunded mandates that we're gonna get from the state that we can think
No.
of?
The absolute worst thing that could happen is we cut all the trees down and the DNR pulls our state forest, or our school forest designation, because there ain't no forest.
Well, yeah, that's very true.
That's
Okay.
not how it would
Yeah. From a liability standpoint, is it possible to build some fire pits out there? So in the wintertime, the kids can go out there and, you know, have a hot dog roast or sit around? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud because
I'll speak
we
to that.
talk about,
We did do that at Forest View
Okay.
back in, I mean, when I was there, and I haven't been there for a while, but there was a protocol and a procedure for that. We had an outdoor learning experience,
Okay.
and it was just that. It was about fire, it was safety. Those are middle school kids, those are 8th grade. I've got K through 4, but that would be, we'd have to have some policy, or I wouldn't just be having people build a fire without coming to
Correct.
Peter and Carrie and people first, but I mean, is it a possibility, Randy? Yes, and we did do it at Forest View.
but it would be, I mean, to me, it would be a classroom type of a situation where there'd be teachers out there and maybe even some parents.
Yes,
I think that would be fantastic where they can
yes,
get out of the classroom and have some fun.
yes.
Roasting some hot dogs or, what do you call that, with graham crackers and chocolate? S'mores, yeah, s'mores, yeah. So, yeah, no, thank you.
The last piece I would share is we have the connection with Steve Bartz, the local DNR person, and then Laura Duffney from the state level, and she attended our meeting as well in May. She would be the one that would help set up a variety of trainings and things that are available to us, but she really framed it for us in a way that expanded it past our vision of having kids learn, as Blake said, just about nature. It's really the goal of a school forest is to have it be an outdoor learning environment, and any subject could be learned out there. So you could bring your set of classroom clipboards out there and bring a writing assignment and rejuvenate maybe the creativity, of outside of a classroom, or you might be just stuck a little bit. So the object is to see it as an outdoor learning environment and not just, we are only going to identify trees out there.
And you had also addressed at that meeting that other elementary schools would have access to the forest as well. It would just be sort of a transportation.
A field trip or a bus over.
Right.
And then we made note to say that we certainly wouldn't ever step on or be in the way of, right now, we all plant kindergarten trees at the middle school, and that's an established piece. That would continue.
Okay.
3rd grade goes to the planetarium and takes a visit back to see their school tree, and that's established and in place. And it gets them to see the middle school that they'll attend later on. That would all stay in place. But if a site wanted to come and say, could we have a day or a half a day in your forest, of course.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution establishing the Baxter Elementary School Forest.
Second.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Heidman to approve, to vote on the resolution. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Okay.
Kelly?
Kevin Boyles,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
Randy Heidman,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
all in favor.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Stelmach, and thank you, sir. Very nice to meet you.
Question about order. Should we be doing roll call votes for all these today because we don't have a full
No,
quorum?
only if we have a quorum, we're good,
Okay,
unless you
no.
have a virtually attending board member, and then you have to do all
No,
all roll call votes.
just a question, thank you.
Good question. All right, next up is the approval of the Sourcewell contract for the 24-25 school year.
I think you missed one.
Oh, what did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry, to adopt a resolution relating to the election of school board members and calling the school district general election. It's kind of an important one.
So this is a regular action by the board. Every time you hold an election, regardless of what kind of election it's going to be. And the board is responsible for setting the resolution, telling the public that they're going to conduct an election. This one, of course, will be for new board members, possibly, or incumbents being reelected. You'll see the ballot, which will be completed once tomorrow's over with, because tomorrow's the last day to register or to apply for candidacy. And once that's done, and then it goes to print, and it's something then we work with the county on to prepare for the November election.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Heidman with a second from Director Brecken on the resolution related to the election of school board members. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is also a roll call vote.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
Randy Heidman,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
Kevin Boils.
Yes.
All in favor?
All right, now we'll go to the approval of the Sourcewell contract for the 24-25 school year.
Right. Sourcewell, as you know, provides a tremendous amount of help to the district. A lot of it is, and most of it is in teacher development and so forth. It's a partnership that we have with them in order for us to provide services for our teachers and our students. School districts throughout the entire state of Minnesota are part of some type of a organization that does this type of assistance for the school districts. Technically, I don't think we could make it without them, to be honest with you. There's a lot of things we wouldn't be able to do. So, and I know this has been a relationship that the district has had for some time. If you're concerned about what it costs, is at the very end. And to be honest with you, we get a lot more out of it than what we put into it for financial support for them. It's a great opportunity for the district. It's a great opportunity for our teachers and our other staff. And then, of course, in the end, it's a benefit for our students. So I would highly recommend that the board approve this agreement with Sourcewell.
Well, this is a sticky procedural question.
It is.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
I think
too.
I think we're gonna have to table it because Director Spear has to abstain,
Oh, and you need a quorum for that.
We need a
and we need a quorum. We don't have 4 votes for it.
That's right.
We should have thought, I should have thought about that and pulled it off the agenda for tonight, so it's gonna have to sit until next
Yep.
meeting. Hopefully that doesn't create any.
Is that gonna create a problem
I don't
by
think
waiting
so.
till the next?
I don't know. I don't think so. Carrie? Okay.
No issues with that? Okay. Then we really don't have any choice. It pretty much has to be tabled with, for
Sure.
lack of a motion again, for lack of a quorum.
Correct. That's a good point.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, yeah.
Unless you
You don't
quit your
have
job
to.
right now. You call it in. I'm done.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right, moving on. Approval to purchase parcel number 813205002, the high school farm property from Crow Wing County as presented by Marcy and Jeff. Come on up. Our shiny Director of Buildings and Grounds. I can't recall in 4 years ever having seen you in the hot seat before, Jeff. This is,
I've been here.
I wish this was something more contentious so we could grill you a little bit.
I'm open, so just have at it.
He was super excited.
Yeah.
So this has been a discussion item for you guys previously. We did go back with the county. Thank you to Director Ward, because he went and talked to, or did public comment, and we were able to purchase the 40 acres. So this document before you is the purchase price. And then with your approval, we'll process the check and the property will be ours. So,
Just a quick amendment to, there were actually 3 board members involved in kind of getting this over the finish line. I was one of them, not that that matters, but Director Dondelinger did some legwork on this as well, so I don't want to let that pass without noting. But clearly the tide turned and this got where we wanted it to get to, and the county was extraordinarily congenial and good to work with once John explained our situation and opened that door up. So Director Ward, wherever you are, thank you for going in there and doing that. So to your point, Marcy, thank you. Sorry for that.
I will make a motion that we approve the purchase of parcel number well, whatever that parcel number is, of the high school farm property from Crow Wing County.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Spear to approve the purchase of the property from the county. Further discussion?
The one thing I forgot to add is this is coming from the excess construction funds, which cannot be used for staff or personnel.
Okay.
So just make that clear.
Thank you, that's what I was gonna ask.
And the other thing, just for the benefit, again, for those watching, was the original proposal was there was 80 acres in play. The county wanted us to buy all 80 acres, or however that worked out originally. This proposal is now to buy 40. We didn't feel like, not fixing sidewalks to buy 40 acres of trees was in the best interest of the school district. And again, our 5 county commissioners and Deb Erickson, who's the county administrator, found a way to get it done for us in a way that worked for everybody. So again, we want to express our heartfelt gratitude to Crow Wing County, because this thing drew out longer than it needed to, and mistakes were made on both sides, but we learned from it and everybody's good. So good work on this, Marcy. And Jeff, excellent work.
Yeah, thank you. Came in at the perfect time.
It's like they got to the 1 yard line, you get to carry it across for the touchdown. All right, hearing no further discussion, those in favor, oh, sorry, Director Heidman.
Marcy, how many acres do we actually use out there of the 40?
That's why he's up here.
I would say approximately three or less as of right now, yeah.
Okay.
Our main buildings on there.
The only reason I ask is, who knows, down the road, maybe we have the ability to sell 20 of the 40.
Always a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, so, cool, 3 acres.
Yeah. Yep. So a lot of work to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Any further discussion, questions, commentary? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those in favor, same sign. Motion carries. We just bought 40 acres.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have the discussion approval to change the November 18th, 2024 school board meeting to November 12th, or hold a special school board meeting to canvass election results from the November election. It is also on November 12th? Is that a typo, or is
No.
that?
You have to have the results by November 12th.
Okay, so the election's on like the 5th or 6th or
It's the
something, right?
5th,
But you
right.
have to canvass them and,
Before the 15th,
okay.
so it doesn't have to be the 12th. Technically, it could be the 13th,
Sure.
14th.
Again, just from my perspective, the easiest thing seemed to be to move the school board meeting if calendars were amenable to it. Mine is.
Works for me.
To move it to the 18th.
No, to move it to the 12th from the 18th.
Yes, yes, yes.
To squeeze that in by the deadline.
That way we don't have to have a special
Okay,
meeting.
well, that sounds like a quorum, so.
Okay.
And I did talk to both Directors Warden and Donlinger. I don't think they had a problem with that either. Things can obviously come up, but.
I'll make a motion to change the November 18th meeting to November 12th.
I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to move the regular school board meeting from November 18th to November 12th to canvass election results. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That is it for action items for tonight. We have one policy committee meeting update from Director Heidman, and we have a meeting Wednesday. Another one coming up.
Another one, yeah. Yeah, we talked about policy 722, the public data, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We're going to be retiring policy 560, which will be moved into policy 809 with talking about naming rights for school buildings and grounds, et cetera. Cell phone policy discussion. I believe we're at the point where we're going to start the year with current policy.
a question?
No, it's a statement. Which means we're going to enforce no cell phones in the classroom during instructional hour. And then when we come back in more meetings, but when the kids come back after Christmas break, we'll be having a discussion about no cell phones at all with students.
It's been a while since I've had this many Costco and grocery store conversations about a topic at the school board level as I have about this.
Oh, yeah.
But the other cool thing is about it, they're low temperature conversations, you know, it's not, but there's definitely a lot of interest out there.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
You know, and then again, just for the benefit of those that don't get to have these conversations that we get to have, the whole point in delaying a policy, district level policy revision until October or November is to buy time to look at what some districts around the country are already doing, where they're attempting to implement full day bans. I know on this board, we have, you know, some schools of thought around one versus the other. From my own point, I want to see what happens with, you know, more of these districts that go ahead of us over the next 2 or 3 months and try to implement both versions of this. And then we can walk around and look at where, you know, where they ran into a tree and where they found open space, and probably learn a lot on how we craft what we do with, when we do 524. And then we'll probably sunset 540, which is the cell phone policy that's referred to in most of the building handbooks today. Like all the elementary schools point to, I think all of them do.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna sunset that and just have 524 be the governing policy. But the public may be surprised that we don't actually alter that too much, leaving it more to the administrative team to make fluid decisions based on what's working, what's not working at the building levels. So more to come on that. Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, the biggest challenge, I mean, I've seen a lot of different news articles. A lot of small schools are going to be instituting no cell phone at all throughout the school, but, you know, there are 400 kids in K through 12. You know, we're looking at 1,800. So, I mean, to me, our challenge is, what are we going to do with storage? How are we going to handle the cell phones? So that, more to come, obviously. Bullying, we talked about safe and supportive school plan, getting parents and legal guardians involved with that discussion. We're gonna update some language with our joint powers agreement with the city of Baxter. Just to let people know, we work with the city of Baxter for some recreation programs, and we have a joint powers agreement that needs to be updated, and no big deal there. It's just removing some old language, and we'll be having legal counsel review that, I believe, as well. And then we discussed a strategic plan for Gitche-Zeebe, as far as maybe putting together something for how we want to operate, and, you know, looking at fees, et cetera. So, end of report.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That brings us to Director Lord, the Business Services Report. I always feel like if you have to walk from the back of the room, there should be like play on music.
That could be kind of fun.
You can bring a speaker to the next meeting.
So in your report, as noted last month, there's no financial report this month because it's the June, which won't be ready until the audit is complete. And then our enrollment report, obviously we won't have our first report until next month. So we started this report, I think it was 3 years ago, where we summarized the data from the state on non-resident and resident students. I'm just gonna preface that I don't have all the whys they go, the places they go, but this is a nice format just so you guys can kind of see a number. So the first page is the non-residents, which means the students that are not in our district but come here. And we always have a rolling 10 years, so the column that was added this year was the 22-23 column. And the very top is total ADMs for 424 are coming in, and that's tuition and options. And then the next chart below that is options broken out. So where are they coming from? And I highlight the districts that are greater than 10 ADMs. So you'll see Pillager's the first one, Crosby, Pequot, and then Onamia are the ones that we're pulling from the most. Just a quick summary on that one. And then there are differences because of the data that we pulled, the timing of it. So you'll notice at the bottom, the total non-resident ADM for this year is 346.50, but up on the top, the summary is 372. So it's the difference in timing. So it's not exact, but it's just so you guys have data on where it's coming from. And then the next report is the residents enrolled elsewhere, meaning they're in our district, but they're going to other places. The very top, again, is the summary by totals. So charter, options elsewhere, tuition. We have about 979.6 residents that are going elsewhere. And in 22-23, again, I highlight any ADMs that are over 10 in yellow, and then the orange are over 10 and are an online school. So For charters, we have the Minnesota Transitions Charter School, Cross Lake, Pillager, and Discovery Woods as the top ones. And then the options elsewhere is Aiken, Pillager, Crosby Ironton, Pequot, Houston, which is an online school, which is why it's odd. It sticks out to me. Onamia, Little Falls, and Piers. And then very bottom, Pine River is also there. So we have about 685, if you're rounding, residents that leave our district to go to other schools.
You have the reverse number for outside ones that come here, that same number?
That's the first one.
Okay.
Yep.
But I mean, what are those in terms of families or, you know, I always ask that question.
As far as,
As far as the non-ADM, what is that?
oh,
Do we have
student
any-
count.
That looks like from a student perspective.
So you did ask that last year, and I did ask Sue, and she said that that would be very difficult to
Okay,
come
fair
up with
enough.
that number. So, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. ADMs aren't that far off. but
Yes.
They are a little bit off. I
Yes.
guess, where I'm at. Next question, you might not have this data available. Do we have an updated kindergarten enrollment?
Well, as of today, we do, but the numbers are still floating a
Sure.
little bit. We're still working on trying to balance between the schools, seat counts. I was able to call some parents, two of them agreed to move from,
Harrison?
yes,
Mhm.
to Lowell, so we could lower that, but we still have work to do at Harrison. But, you know, we won't really know until the first day of school.
We can't know until you see who shows up. But
Whoever
what's our
crosses the
rough
threshold.
kindergarten number as of today?
She's gonna pull it up. Kelly's got my,
It's okay if you don't have it. I just was curious.
It's
Last
very
I heard, it
good.
was like 422. No.
no.
Oh. I think it's in the threes.
334.
Okay. Any other questions for Marcy on the business services?
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess, and we are down to superintendent's report with Lieutenant Grant.
Lots of things are happening right now with our staff. Example, today and tomorrow, our new teachers are in. I think there were 26 in the room this morning. And, you know, I told them about what it was like when I was my first day as a teacher, and I didn't get any training like they're getting today. It was, I'm surprised at what happened 30 years ago or whatever, but it's really exciting to have our new staff come in. And they're getting acquainted with each other, so to speak, but they're getting a lot of support from the building principals, from Carrie's office. It's just, you know, they're a little bit nervous, a little bit tense because everything's new. But I told them that the most important thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. Because you don't know anything, and if you don't ask, and nobody knows you don't know if you don't ask, so. But it's really good to see that get started. The PLCs were meeting last week. We're getting to, it's kind of like in drag racing. You know, have you ever been to BIR when they smoke the tires and then back up to get ready for the race? Right now, we're smoking the tires, so to speak, so we can get ready to race on the last week in August, where everybody comes together, and then, of course, we get ready for the first day of school. But there's lots and lots of people doing lots of work right now with staff to get them thinking about what we need to do to be successful and working in their building teams and so forth, their leadership teams. So as I've been watching this, it's good to hear the conversations about what their goals are going to be for their building goals and what the principals are doing to help their staff. Because this isn't a one-man show, and it is literally, it takes a team to make this work. And it doesn't stop just when school starts. It's a year-long process. And if you could come and see what's going on, I think you'd be very impressed about all the people that are doing their best to get the program started on the first day of school so that, you know, our business thing starts working with the kids coming in. Talking to the parents, some of them, for kindergarten, for example, they are really hesitant to move. But as I talk to them about, well, you could have your students in a smaller class setting, and then they start thinking. But it's an emotional thing before anything else. So they have to let that ride a little bit before they're gonna come back and say, oh, I think I can do this. So I'm still gonna be calling, trying to move some kids. But again, we really don't know what's gonna happen until they come across the threshold of the door. And then, we may have to make adjustments from there. But we're going in the right direction. And I'm looking forward to the last week of August when everybody comes in. And that's when all the action really starts to happen as far as ramping up for the first day of school.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, the last section is the director update section. We'll start out. Anybody have anything they'd like to? Director Hyman?
I do. What I'd like to propose for future board meetings is I'd like to have a presentation regarding CIP goals for each of the buildings. Not necessarily for 24, 25, but that would be nice to know. What I'd like to know, and I think the community deserves to know this as well, what were the goals for 23, 24? Did we meet the goals? If we didn't meet the goals, what do we need to change? Do we need to look at curriculum? Do we need a teacher development training? Student behavior, cell phones? And then what are the CIP building goals for 24, 25? I was reading the MDA report card for 23, 24 will be released after the November election. So we won't know anything as far as MCAs and things like that until presumably sometime in probably December of 24.
It shouldn't be true.
Because they're not going to release the data.
Scores.
I
Well,
think,
right now, they're embargoed.
huh?
Yeah.
They're embargoed. We can't release them yet, according to the MDE. But the schools can start looking at them, but they won't be allowed for the public to see for a while.
Correct.
I don't know what the date for that is exactly.
Well, I read an article where it said that, and you can always trust what an article says, right? Legislatively, they passed something this year that they weren't going to release the data publicly until after the election results. Somebody can do their own research, but that's what I read.
Director Ross, do you have any additional insight on that?
Yeah.
We're fact checking right now.
Okay, thank you. And I think the district community, I think that the public deserves to see these numbers. Good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm not here throwing darts at anybody or anything like that, because we're all in this together. The board, administration, and teachers. We're all in this together. And it's not blaming anyone, it's accountability. Who are we accountable to? Parents, et cetera. So I think it's important that for future meetings, at least some sort of presentation about some of these goals from 23 to 24. Did we meet them? Why didn't we meet them? Things like that.
Well, can you tell me a little bit more about what that looks like? Because you're talking about every board meeting?
No. I'm not talking about every board meeting.
Okay, so
But I
explain
mean-
that to me, help me.
At least, I personally believe we should have interim assessments. And I don't know if we do interim assessments.
Oh, looks like we have some information on the MCA embargo.
We looked up on the MDE website, data is embargoed until August 29th.
Oh, okay, so they're going to release it
Yeah.
August 29th?
So generally speaking, that's how it always works. It's released the day,
Okay.
that's what we have the day of the new staff, or the staff welcome back, and then.
Okay.
Yep, and then just as a general piece of information for all of you, we did the CIP retreat a little bit differently this year. And what we did at the CIP retreat was ask everybody to create slides for a board presentation that includes their goals last year, if they met those goals, and their goals for this year. So those are ready for all of the sites.
You were reading my mind.
That's a scary thought, Randy.
I know it is.
I'm pretty sure a puppy just died somewhere.
But it is something that I'm somewhat passionate about because,
Of course,
I mean,
of
we're
course.
here to educate kids. And how do we measure
Well, I would say the principals are pretty excited about the work that their leadership teams did the last couple of days, last week as well. Superintendent Grant was there. It was really fun to see their teams working together in the new format that they had put together. And so we have not come up with a structure for that to happen yet. But we'll work with admin to make a plan, and Superintendent Grant can get back to you with options, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, and what would also be nice, and I don't know if this should be a board presentation or a board retreat item, Fastbridge. Giving us I've had presentations because I've asked, and well, I'm also on the district advisory committee, so Director Spear and I have a little bit inside on some of that information as far as what's going on with Fastbridge, but if you could explain to the board, or even at a retreat, whatever, to me, it's somewhat easy to extract data.
Yeah, I will ask the chair and the superintendent to give direction to admin, and we'll come up with a plan and be happy to share that with you after we do our data collection this year.
Yeah.
It's a worthy point you bring up on the CIP stuff too. I mean, but they're already working on it. I think it's, maybe what I would do is figure out what committee that best lives in to kind of structure that to bring to the board.
Yeah.
That in the past has gone through the district advisory
Yeah.
committee. We
Yeah.
get access to all the.
So that feels like the logical place to kind of craft it in a method that's, not gargantuan and creates, I mean, I think what we're trying to do is streamline these meetings to the point where, we're not doing
Right.
too many of these 72-page PowerPoint presentations.
Right, well, maybe if it's like one or two schools per meeting or something like that where they can share information. I don't know, but I know, again, Director Spear and I, we were privy to the district CIP plan for last year. We were given documents for that and whatnot, so.
Well, the overall CIP is presented to the board right after it's minted back earlier in the year.
As part of the world's best.
Yeah, I mean, we see that.
Correct.
What we don't see is to your point, I think what you're trying to say is we're not seeing how we're tracking against that. We just see how it looks when it's launched or modified.
Yeah, and they did release the 2024 World's Best Workforce Legislative Report. I have a copy of that right here. And we got some work to do, that's for sure. But again, I'm not throwing darts, we're all in this together, and we are a team. We all wear Warrior Blue, and
Well, I'm wearing Warrior Blue. I don't know about you. That's like
well, this is
Target blue.
darn close. But I just think that is something that it's nice to know what's going on, and I think the public deserves it as well. Not just the board, but so I've taken enough time.
As long as, Carrie, as long as you're there.
Sure.
I'm looking at this document that Marcy gave us about the residents enrolled elsewhere. Is there a way that we can collect some data about why some of these residents are going to some of these other districts?
Yeah, I don't know that there's an ideal way to do it once they've left, because that's harder to do. We have talked about options as folks might have a change in plans, or maybe even why they're open enrolling and coming, to do some more intentional data collection. We've just started having those preliminary conversations, but you can certainly give direction to the superintendent, and he can ask us to do some more of those things. We've just been a little busy with new teachers and things lately, so we haven't gotten very far with those things.
Absolutely.
But there have been some preliminary conversations about, it would be nice to have some more specific data rather than just maybe notes that have been jotted when people have shared.
Right.
We would certainly want that to be part of the survey.
Yeah, no question about it.
Great, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a byproduct too, Director Brecken, of a collective board of 6 people with 15 years of board experience and an interim superintendent and an executive director of schools that's how many months into the role?
2 months.
There we go. So what we're.
I completely understand.
No,
that.
where I was going with it
Yeah.
was that 2 years ago, we had part of some of the money that we got, the COVID money that we got, we were able to put into specifically, it was earmarked for lost enrollment and stuff like that. So we did like surveys, we did go out and survey as part of the pre-work that we did prior to the kind of district marketing campaign that was underway at that point. That was when we went out and did some radio ads and did some different things to try to boost enrollment 2 school years ago. I mean, I think I think it's generous to call it mixed results on how that went. I think we learned a lot about what not to do, and it'll be interesting to see. I think it can dovetail nicely with what we're gonna do with the study. But I also know, it's been a couple years since I spent time, but I know that certain, specifically elementary school principals, if they lose a student, they call those parents and they're pretty good. I know that Sheila was really great about it when she was over at Riverside. Todd was great when he was at Lowell. I believe Dr. Stelmach is really good about doing that. She kind of knows, if you go ask her, she probably knows where most of her kids went that didn't come back. But I think, to your point, creating a more structured way of trying to analyze that instead of just looking at it as numbers on a spreadsheet is because that's, to me, that's why the head count's so much more important than the ADM thing is for me, because I'm trying to visualize it as people, not as funding formula numbers that plug into an equation. Even though they're not that different, it still somehow makes more sense when you're not looking at 0.3 children for some reason.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So tell Sue, she doesn't have to run it, and I'm not trying to kill her. Or Marcy, you can tell her. I always want that number, and I never get it. I'm never gonna get it. Any other director updates? Well, in the absence of additional, so we see all the future meetings outlined here. We do have Personnel and Benefits Committee meeting Wednesday. Just realized I'm not working, I guess, on Wednesday. I'm a school board guy on Wednesday. And a Policy and Community Relations meeting at 1:30 here at Wesby. New teacher orientation and breakfast on the 19th. Facilities meeting on the 21st. Also student support services, a lot of committee stuff before we get school rolling here. Forest View's open houses on the 27th at 4:30. And all the elementaries plus BHS and LEC at 4:30 on the 28th. Then we have the big old welcome back at the Gitchazibby. Working on my 45-minute presentation for that.
Good.
And Finance Committee meeting on the September 19th after the first day of school on the board meet and greet. So some of us are out of town. We got that all sorted out though, didn't we, Kelly? Everybody knows where they're going, or will? Will, yep. And then our next regularly scheduled school board meeting is not until September 23rd. So that said, I think that covers all of that, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Director Hyden was a little faster on the draw. We'll give him the motion to adjourn, seconded by Director Brecken. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned.